You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 37. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hello.
Morning, Amplifiers.
Hello. Oh my gosh, Brie, this spa water situation you got going on is delightful.
Right?
It's like strawberries and mint.
Strawberries, basil, mint.
It's pretty divine.
I know. Thais and I, just hanging out as usual.
Eating nuts.
Eating nuts and drinking spa water.
How are you going to eat nuts and do a podcast?
I'll figure it out.
Okay, yeah. You're going to probably, everyone's going to be listening.
Can people hear me crunching on my cashews?
Disgusting. I don't think anyone wants to hear that. Okay, that's the last one. She went and grabbed another one. Poor listeners. Look at them. If I can hear it, they can hear it. You should be embarrassed. Look at her. She's turning red, as she should be.
She's turning red because she's laughing so hard.
Because you're making our listeners endure you eating walnuts.
Not embarrassed. Also, it's cashews. And
Whatever.
They're roasted. Mary roasted them.
Okay, well, that's delicious. Okay, so we are going to talk about rejection.
Yeah. So we're here and we're podcasting and we're being present.
We're being present. Okay. Turn off the phones. She ate another. Did you guys hear that? She ate another one.
They're just so good.
Okay, I'm going to take this shit away from you. Look, this is me taking it away to the other side.
Don't dump those in the... Here, put the lid on it.
Okay. Clearly we're ready for you.
Okay, so it's Monday morning and we're here podcasting.
And we're going to talk about rejection. Isn't that a really fun topic for Monday mornings?
But before we get there, we want to announce that we have something big coming up.
It's epically big.
It's something we've never done before.
It's going to be the best thing ever.
It's amplified. If we were to use a verb.
It is very amplified. Yeah. That's a good word to describe it.
And we are just getting it launched and just getting it announced and out into the world. And
it's called The Amplified Woman.
It is called that.
It's a 6-month incubator for entrepreneurs who want to unbusiness their business. And by that, I mean, get the stress out of being an entrepreneur.
Stop doing all the shit that you hate. Stop doing all the shit that feels terrible. Stop treating yourself like shit. We felt
inspired to create this program because Brie and I have stressed a lot in our business. I literally feel like 10 years of my life have been removed in the past 2 years of running my business full time because of how stressful some elements of the business is. And when Brie and I talk about it and when we incorporate certain things into our lives, we realize that it doesn't have to be stressful. Now, in the beginning, it kind of does have to be stressful because you're launching something new into the world and it's terrifying and it's stressful. But after a while, once you start getting into the rhythm of your business, it literally doesn't have to be stressful. But there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of marketing out there that's telling you have to hustle and do all of the things and you have to work hard and you have to have the funnels and the things and the things and the things and you're trying to do it all and you're one person and then you find yourself constantly stressed. You feel like your relationships are falling apart. You don't have sex anymore. You don't have time to make a green smoothie. Your kind of quote unquote self-care goes out the window. And then it's like,
what's the point?
What the fuck's the point? Is there really a point to being an entrepreneur if you're going to hate your life doing it?
Well, and if you're going to feel like shit, like Thais and I joke all the time that we're the worst bosses in the world. Did your boss give you President's Day off?
No, my boss did not give me President's Day off.
I didn't get President's Day off either.
I didn't even know you could get off for President's Day. So
our bosses are the worst, really.
Sometimes I text Brie and I'm like, can you just give me permission to take this day off? Because it's easier when it's somebody else is your boss and they can tell you what to do. But when you're your own boss,
we're the worst slave drivers. We're the worst.
So we created a 6-month incubator program for entrepreneurs to invite in more ease and grace into their life through 6 areas. Spirituality, purpose, joy. We're diving into relationships, communication, abundance. We're talking money. We're talking about all the things that are required to not only have a successful business, because that's, cool and all, but to have a successful life while you're having a successful business and whatever that means for you. The coolest thing about this, before we move on, is that Bree and I have different expertises. Bree is a lot about, okay, here you are now. How can you get to what you want? And I'm all about, here you are now. How can we, remove the patternings from your past that's preventing you from getting what you want? So we decided to break down every month into 2 weeks of investigating the past, releasing beliefs, releasing the stories, and then 2 weeks of future of what's now. How can you build this into your life? How can you infuse more of this into your life and create systems for success so you succeed? So it's really, really cool. It's a very innovative program. There's nothing like this in the market.
We're also bringing on guests. So every month we will have an interview with a guest expert in the area as well to bring in just a little more perspective. So for those of you that are interested in learning more, it's up on our website, theamplifycollective.com/incubator. You can get a little bit more information about it there and learn about how to join us if you feel so inspired.
Spots are limited, and that's not like a fake scarcity. It really is, because we want to create a really intimate, supportive group. Bree and I are going to pour our hearts into this. So we really want to be able to give time and support to each individual woman. So spaces are limited, and we would love for you to consider joining us. It's going to be really, really sweet. And you just got to think, like, where do I want to be at the end of the year? And is this something that's going to support me in getting there by the end of the year? And odds are it's a yes. It's really good. It's going to be a really, really sweet experience. So
plus you get more of this, and maybe if you're lucky, I'll even eat cashews on the training videos.
Oh, and you know that's sexy. Like that's the epitome of sexiness right there.
And it's so beneficial. It's such a good learning environment.
Yes.
For our people.
You mean the cashews?
Yeah.
Okay. Trust me, she's not going to be eating cashews on the training calls. I will pull them away from her. Make that not happen.
Good thing we're not doing the training calls together.
Okay, so
we're back.
Let's talk about rejection, because we have a really cool guest coming up. Her name is Jen Glantz, and she talks a lot about how she was rejected multiple times in her experience, in her trying to put her book out there, all the things. So let's talk about how to handle rejection and how to navigate this area, because it really sucks.
So it's really interesting when Thais and I were processing and talking about how we're going to, lead in today's interview. We start talking about rejection, and I instantaneously had this experience flash back.
Oh my gosh.
Into
it must have been traumatizing.
My head. It was. I feel like it has a lot to do with where I'm at right now as well. But it was, I believe it was in the 6th grade. I can see the classroom. And I believe his name was Ben.
Aww.
And I had written like the cutest little, like, I think you're cute, blah, blah, blah. Like,
can you imagine little Bree?
Crushed. Like, so.
What did he do?
Devastatingly rejected. I don't remember. I think it was one of those notes where you'd like circle yes, circle no. And I'm pretty sure he either circled no and like gave it back to me, or just took it and like threw it away. And it was like the most heartbreaking rejection of like, you're a 6th grader. I'm like 10 years old. And I like put my heart on the line, and I'm like, super vulnerable and terrified.
So I remember in 9th grade, I had theater, and with Mr. Templeton. For all of you FHSers, you know how amazing Mr. Templeton was. And oh my gosh, I keep hitting the thing and it keeps making a noise. Okay. And I'm very passionate and expressive when I talk.
Oh my God, I should video sometime. Her hands are everywhere. It is
at
just,
I'm not
knock
eating,
on wood.
At least I'm not eating walnuts.
Knock on wood. At least she's never hit me, because, don't. Okay. Now she is hitting me on purpose, but her hands are everywhere.
Okay. I'm Brazilian. Okay. It's not, I don't have a choice here. I would be banned from the country if I don't use my hands. Okay. So
Templeton.
Theater, 9th grade, there was a boy, and he... okay, let me back up. I was a nerd in middle school. Like, I believed boys had cooties till literally 8th grade. Like, I would skip lunch to go read in the library because I felt so excluded from life.
Wait, how old were you when you got your first kiss?
I was 3 years old.
No, not
He was
that. That doesn't count.
He was a little Japanese boy.
No,
It's when I lived in Japan. Seriously, there is a picture of my first kiss.
Not that
Okay,
first
so
kiss.
quick story. So
Not that first kiss. No.
3 years old, I kiss a little Japanese boy. I actually taught this little Japanese boy how to use chopsticks because I am a pro at life. Even though I'm Brazilian, living in Japan, I knew how to use chopsticks over a little Japanese boy.
This is not what I want.
I know, but this story, but it's so cute. And the teacher,
we're talking about rejection.
the teacher like saw us kissing, so like she like ran and grabbed a camera. You know, and back in the day, you like had a filter
Seriously,
thing.
guys, I literally cannot get her to stop.
Okay. So theater, 9th grade. I don't actually remember my first kiss. I think it was around this period. Actually, I think it was like 9th grade era. Okay. Actually, I do remember my first kiss. It is not appropriate for our podcast. So
we're explicitly rated. What is off limits here?
Okay, so it was. I remember now. It was in Brazil, and it was. Am I really sharing? This is not a rejection story though. So we were in the car with my aunt and my aunt's husband. So, you know, my uncle and my cousin, and then my uncle's son, and then me, and then his uncle's son's friend. And we were all in the car, and I was sitting on his lap, and he like whispers in my ear. He's like, "I want to kiss you," and I'm like, "Okay." And so he kisses me like in the car in front of like all the people. And then we get out of the car, and he drops something. He goes, "Wait, can you hold back?" Like I dropped something. He didn't drop anything. And then he kisses me and we make out. And I was so nervous, and it was such a thing. And now when I look back on it, I feel like it's a little creepy. Like I feel like it was just a little Brazilian boy creepy sort of status. But anyway, so
okay, back to high school.
9th grade. I really liked this boy, and we flirted a lot the whole semester. And at one point, we were alone doing the lights for the production, and I lean over and I kiss him, and he pulls back, and it was heartbreaking. So I didn't actually kiss him; like our lips never touched because he kind of pulled back, and he was like, "No," and I was so embarrassed. I think that's part of the rejection process, is just a sense of just so embarrassing.
And now that you say that, I have a memory too of that happening to me, and it was the same thing. It was devastating. Like I can still even physically feel it in my body as we're talking about it. That just like pain.
The heart just drops, and you immediately get flushed, and you just feel so awkward. And so that was the last time I ever attempted to kiss a boy. That was literally the last time.
I don't ever make first moves anymore. Look at how rejection shapes us, you guys. It
does.
We literally each had like a 5-second experience. And now for the last, for me, 15 years.
You're so old.
15 years. I have refused to make the first move because this experience of rejection like defined so much about my life.
Well, and I feel like when we get rejected during that hormonal teen years, it really shapes us. And so our attempt, at least anyway, in this podcast is to remind you that rejection is not only a part of life, but please don't let it stop you in the future. Like, please don't let it stop you from trying again and moving again. Because while, you know, it's one thing to not kiss a boy again, it's another thing to not go after a business venture, to not go after a book published deal, to not go after things that are kind of big and fulfill your purpose or whatever, because you got rejected once. Like, please don't let that stop you.
So I do really well with this in my business life, but I do not do really well with this in my personal life.
The rejection?
So it's really interesting because being rejected on a personal level is totally different than being rejected on a business level. Like on a business level, I can understand, and
it's business.
It's business, and it's just not the right
about the
fit,
money,
and it's this and that, and
there's going to be another opportunity.
Yeah, and even though all of those things still hold true for my personal life as well, I still have a really hard time facing rejection in my personal life.
Let's get into the psychology of Brie.
I mean, and I don't think it's just me. I think it's in general.
We're talking to you right now.
Of course, for me, it's there's this extra layer. Like, yes, I am my business, and I'm also not my business. It's my business. It's a separate entity, and just filed S-corp paperwork in the end of last year. So it's literally a separate entity, and so I can see that as being something that's external for me. And if someone's rejecting my business, it's not such a big deal. Versus like, if it's me and it's my heart.
Or we take it personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's one tip, I guess, one tidbit to support you in not feeling as rejected in your business is to remember that even though oftentimes when we refer to our business, we're like, it's our baby, you know, it's a part of us. It's really not. It's really not your baby. It's really not a part of you. You know, it is a separate entity. And the more that you could disconnect who you are from your business, the more you can take more risks, you can have more difficult conversations, and you can grow your business in a more impactful way than if your ego and your heart was in the business. So there's a line there, of course, because it is your business and it is your heart and it is your sweat and tears. But the more that you can distance yourself from believing that when you get rejected in your business, you are getting rejected, the easier it is for you to move forward. And, you know, like I said, all of the things. So remove yourself from connecting with the business as much as possible because it's hard. I get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the hard part about rejection is the fact that we take it so personal. It becomes a personal affront. They're not just saying like this isn't a good fit. They're saying you are a bad person. You are not good and worthy. And I think,
or of course, that's how we perceive it.
Of course, and it's because I think of our innate fragility. So I've been doing a lot of work studying and talking about the difference between fragility and resilience. And I know that as we cultivate and use our spiritual tools and use certain psychological conversations to support ourselves, right, that self-development and that soul work, then we can increase our capacity to be resilient so that when something happens, we can bounce right back. And I think that that's a really important homework, a really important thing for you to cultivate, a form of resilience, not a numbness, not a I didn't care about it anyway. That's fake. That's a mask that we put on to not feel hurt. But the more that we can cultivate a sense of resilience, the less likely we're going to be in that state of fragility where we take things personal. So let's talk about some ways that we can cultivate for a little bit more resiliency. Do you have one?
So one of my things that really helped me, because, you know, I had a book agent last year and I was moving forward trying to get a publisher, is that every time I would get a rejection to my book proposal, I would always then remind myself that I was one step closer to my yes, because basically had created this pool of potential publishers that was filled to the brim, you know, with possibility. And that every single time someone removed themselves from that pool of people, it was just whittling it down and bringing me closer to my yes.
So every no is one step closer to a yes.
Yeah. And it seems very cliche, but it's also true. You're weeding out the people and things that aren't aligned with you. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's actually good. Mm-hmm. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my recommendation is, you know, to really heal your wounds. So, you know, we all have wounds from childhood, all of us. No one is immune to it because no one had the perfect childhood. And if you come to me and you say you had the perfect childhood, I call bullshit. We tend to just forget how imperfect it was to protect ourselves. And so we've cultivated trauma in our childhood because of the imperfections that occurred in circumstance and in our parents' inability to give us unconditional love, or our caregivers. And so we've cultivated wounds, and they require healing. It's kind of like if you think about a physical wound, right? Like if you broke your arm and you hurt your shin, or your shoulders like dislocated. If you have all these physical wounds, that prevents you from being strong and resilient and capable of running a marathon, right? So you have to first address the wound, address the physical wound, you know, put your shoulder back in place, heal your broken arm, you know, take care of your shin, all that stuff, in order for you then to be strong enough to go run a marathon. It's the same thing on an emotional level. We have to heal our emotional wounds. We have to. We just fucking have to, because just pretending that this shit doesn't matter, pretending that, you know, you're fine and that you don't care, it doesn't work. Eventually, that kind of mask is going to erode and you're going to feel miserable and unhappy and incapable of feeling the good stuff too. Because when we numb out the bad, we numb out the good. And so we're like numbed out zombies walking around life wondering why we're so fucking unhappy. We have to address the wounds. And so when you address the emotional wounds and cultivate an emotional maturity to life, well, then you're much more able to be resilient. Because here's the deal. This thing that we have within us, we all do, immature perspective of life of you want it and you want it now. And you have to have all the love right now, right? We all do this. We all have this part of it's our inner child, really. Like this, if you don't have it now, then you're never gonna have it, and it's your way or the highway. These are immature emotional responses. And so as that comes up in your life, it's your opportunity to look in, to do the healing work, to do the emotional maturity cultivation work, so that you can understand them, or at least take in the more mature perspective, which is just because it's not happening now doesn't mean it's never going to happen. Just because it's not your way doesn't mean that it's a bad way. Compromise is a part of the game of life, et cetera, et cetera. That is a more resilient, mature adult. Mic drop. What else? Let's share one or two more things. Like, what else can we do to kind of cultivate more resilience so that we can handle rejection with more grace?
I mean, everything that I teach around mindset is really developing resiliency.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of it, just kidding. There goes my spa water.
Oh, no.
A lot of it has to do with reframing and perspective shifting for me. So we get to choose to see, and, very similar to what I shared a minute ago, we get to choose to see things in a certain light. Mm-hmm. And we can choose to see rejection as they hate me. I'm a terrible person. I'm not worthy of having this, blah, blah, blah. Or we can shift that and choose to operate from that future perspective, knowing that all is in divine perfection at every time. And if this was supposed to be a yes, then it would have been, really trusting and leaning on, like Thais was talking about, those spiritual practices to remember and know that you're always taken care of.
Okay, pause. Do you see the difference between Bree's approach and my approach? This is exactly the type of work we do in our incubator. She handles the mindset in the future, which is only important if you first address the wounds and the past. So together, our work is fucking magical. It's so cool. Anyway, keep going.
So addressing this perspective of, I got a no on this. And we just naturally assume the bad. We just naturally assume that means that everything from here on out is going to be a no. That means that my business is over. That means everyone hates me. That means blah, 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 blah. What if that no were necessary because the universe has something greater planned for you and you just don't see it yet?
So there's a real big power in asking yourself helpful questions. So the mind is amazing. If you ask yourself a question, it'll actually respond. If I were to say what's 5 + 1, like your mind's going to respond whether you fucking want it to or not. Like everyone's thinking 6 right now. It's just part of how our mind works.
Mine was thinking 7. Is that a problem?
Probably. So when you ask yourself negative questions like why me and why did this happen and how could I have let this happen? These are kind of lower vibrational questions, like questions that response are not going to be very helpful, right? And that's how we kind of fall into that spiral. And
because if you ask yourself why me, that's when you start getting those answers of because you're a terrible person.
Exactly.
Because you don't deserve to get a yes. Mm-hmm. Because of course you're going to get rejected.
Yes. So one of the things that, I know that Bree advocates and I do too is asking more empowering questions. And one of my favorite type questions that Bree just said is what if? I love what if questions. Like, what if this is for the best? What if life is on your side? What would it look like if this no was really, shifting something away from me so I can focus on what is a yes? Like, what if? And being in that state of what if, that state of curiosity, that state of wonder allows us to really move forward in a different perspective.
So for me, I think of this as being open versus being closed. So we have a rejection, we give our response, and if our response is, well, I'm fucked, that brings us into a very closed, why me, blah, blah, blah. We just we shut everything off. And for me, I believe that going down that road then alters what the universe brings to you on the other side. Versus if you go into this open space, like Thais is talking about, and you start asking, what if? What if there is something greater on the other side? What if this isn't supposed to happen? What if something better is we don't know these things. And then that openness allows the universe to then respond in a different way. Because if you're closed, the universe is not going to be able to bring you anything on the other side. Whereas if you're open and if you're responding to it with this perspective, it allows the universe to bring in and support you more on the back end.
Well, and it's being open to life. It's being open to having your perspective changed. It's being open to seeing things in a different way. It's being open to being more mindful and being more present and being more curious. And I think these are really important things as we navigate life, because we really never know why shit happens. Like, I literally have no idea why things happen. Like, I don't know why, I have had to have experienced really bad abandonment issues. I don't know why, all these things happen. And do I really need to know why in order to live a fulfilled life? Like, what if I don't? What if I can move forward and decide that, what, I don't know why all this happened, but what can I do now? What can I do with what I have and where I am to move forward now? Of course, a lot of this requires you to really hold a space for the rejection, to hold a space for the heartbrokenness, to hold a space. And we've talked about this before. That's an important part of this.
Yeah, because if you're just glazing over and being like, oh, there's a silver lining, and you're that spiritual
I'm going to
bypass,
positive think. I'm going to think positive now.
That's the kind of spiritual bypass stuff that Thais and I have talked about before. So
yeah, and it doesn't work. So you have to first get into it. You have to go through it. And then when you're on the other side, when you sat with the pain enough and you've processed it, then it's important to start asking yourself, okay, what if this is actually a good thing? Like, what can I do with it? Like, how can I move forward? Oftentimes when I get rejected, I literally give myself permission to not think about a solution. And Brie encourages this of me, and I encourage this of her, because oftentimes when we're in that shit, we forget. But Brie's like, Thais, this is not the time to think about how you will respond. This is not the time to think about what's next. This is not the time to think about what you're going to do. This is a time for you to just sit with your shit. Yes, this is a time to just sit with it, process it. And then once you feel processed, the clarity will come for what to do next. And I think that that's a really great way to cultivate more resiliency. We love it. We love this conversation. Obviously, this type of collaboration that Brie and I have is what the whole incubator process is about. We're really excited to bring this out to you guys. It's going to be 6 months of goodness. And if you want to learn more, theamplifycollective.com/incubator. Let's bring on Jen Glantz. Let's bring on Jen. She's really amazing, and you guys are going to love her. Oh my goodness. I am obsessed with our next guest. She has created such an awesome business, doing something extremely unconventional, which I'm not going to reveal yet. Jen, thanks so much for being on our podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Before we get started, let me tell the listeners a little bit more about you, so they just have a little bit of context.
Including your amazing unconventional career.
Jen is the brains behind the business Bridesmaid for Hire, the heart behind the blog, the things I learned from, and the main character inside the best-selling book, All My Friends Are Engaged.
That's amazing.
Her new book, Always a Bridesmaid for Hire, published by Simon & Schuster, is available now for pre-order on Amazon. Jen's told her story to over 500 press outlets worldwide, such as The Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and Fox News, where they called her job the weirdest of all time. Jen is a mentor for New York City women entrepreneurs and a hired speaker for conferences and workshops around the country. She lives on the 26th floor of a New York City apartment the size of a walk-in closet, where she eats way too much pizza and owes way too much money to the library across the street.
This is the most amazing bio, and two, the most amazing thing that you do. I'm so excited to get into it today. What does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
I think that it looks like the kind of life where you're just very daring, and you wake up every single morning and you think about what it is that terrifies you, which might sound like a crazy way to start your day, but I do believe in waking up and thinking about what scares you and then thinking about how you're going to tackle that fear today, whether it's sending an email to somebody for the first time, asking for something that you're sure you're not going to get, or just taking some kind of big risk professionally or personally. I'm a huge believer in stepping out of your comfort zone and failing forward.
I love it. So has this always been true for you?
It has. I think that throughout my career and even in my early life, I faced a lot of rejection. You know, I was definitely bullied a lot in middle school for being who I was, striving to be a writer throughout my life. I had many people tell me I couldn't, I wouldn't, I shouldn't. And because of all that rejection, I had to remember that I was responsible for creating my own opportunities, nobody else. And oftentimes that meant doing things that scared me, asking for things that I didn't think that I was qualified for yet, and really putting myself out there, because if I didn't, nobody else would do it for me.
So what was the catalyst for that perspective shift for you? Because it wasn't like one day you woke up feeling all like victim, hopeless, all those things. And the next day you woke up and was just like, I'm going to be fearless. So what was the catalyst for that shift for you?
It was definitely a buildup over time. As early as I can remember, I was 14 years old and I was a freshman in high school. I had a journalism teacher who told me that I wasn't allowed to be on the newspaper staff of the school because I wasn't a good enough writer.
Wow.
And that was soul crushing for me because I knew I wanted to be a writer. And when you're 14, you don't really know much. And, the fact that I knew that I wanted to do that, and then I had, this authoritative figure say you're not good enough, was heartbreaking. And I went home and I told my mom, I was crying, and I said, I have to give up on being a writer. And she said, you have two distinct choices. You can listen to this guy, or you can tell him to, leave you alone and, just do it yourself. You don't have to listen to people when it comes to doing what you want. And I think that I was so lucky to have a support system. I know when when you're in a creative industry or you're following your dreams, sometimes you have people who are saying, really, you're going to make money doing that, or maybe get a real job. And I was lucky that I had parents who always supported my crazy endeavors and didn't allow me to give up. Like, it wasn't an option in my house. If there was something I wanted, my mom would push me to keep chasing after it. And I think because I've had that as my backbone, it's followed me and carried on through everything I've done.
So let's talk about rejection for a hot minute, because I know how debilitating it can feel when we get rejected. Can you name an instance, like what was a big rejection that you received for something that really, really, that you cared about, and how did you move forward from that?
I think that, as a writer, getting a book published, you have to face a ton of rejection, and nobody talks about that. I tried to publish a book a couple years ago. It was rejected by, 40 something publishers. And it's not just, your agent tells you you're rejected. You actually get the email from the different publishers as to why they rejected you. So you're reading 42 emails. You're not good enough to publish a book. And I just remember, with every single one of those emails, I felt like, what's the point? Why not just give up? This is never going to happen. And that was easy to do. And it's actually one of my biggest regrets, is that I gave up writing that book. That book was something about being a 20-something, graduating college. It was, a long time ago, nothing I could write now. But the same thing then happened when I wrote this book. We pitched it to 30 publishers and 27 rejected me. And I got 27 of those emails again. And it was the kind of process where it rips, you apart. And I remember this time around, I wasn't going to have the same outcome. I wasn't going to give up on myself just because everybody was giving up on me. So I wrote a note to my subscribers. I said, listen, been rejected 27 times. If this book doesn't get bought, I will write it in crayon, pass out copies in Times Square, because I am not going to regret this again. And lucky enough, I did get an offer, and it was fantastic. But I had the mindset this time around that I was not going to give up on myself again.
I love that. And I think a lot of people do, right? I see it all the time. These women giving up on themselves because they get one rejection, or they get one no, or one, they get passed over for promotion. And I know it can be so heartbreaking. So what's a piece of advice that you give these women to encourage them to move forward?
I think that, people always ask me all the time, like, what's the key to success? And I really think that the reason why some people are successful and others aren't is because they didn't give up. And I think when you want to give up, you want to take that rejection and say, you know what, I'm not good enough. You need to change your mindset and look at rejection as the first step in the door, in some weird way. Think of it as, wow, they acknowledged me. They know I exist. I didn't get what I wanted from them. I didn't get the promotion, the book deal, this opportunity, but hey, I'm on their radar. They answered me. I got something from them. And if you think of it like that, then your next step isn't crying for days. It's re-strategizing how to get it from maybe somebody else, maybe do something differently to get it from them. But whenever you're faced with rejection, if you look at it like, yes, they know I exist, and then you do a step to, try again, you're closer to success. There's not one successful person out there who hasn't been rejected so many times. It's almost like we become immune to it because we know it's just a stepping stone toward our goal.
Well, and I know too, like, especially for us and probably for you as well, when you have really unconventional ideas, things that don't necessarily fit into the norm of what's been created before, you get a lot of not only rejection from higher up people, like you said, like publishers, but also some of your peers looking at you and being like, what are you doing? Like, we got that a lot when we started the Amplify Collective. And so I know that you run kind of an unconventional business. So was that also something that people really questioned? Like, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? Where's this coming from?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people questioned it, not only my fellow peers and friends. I remember, when I first started the business, people were like, this is a joke. Don't quit your day job. Like, this is never going to be anything. And I also had, people on live TV. I did live TV interviews where the news anchors on TV were like, this is the stupidest thing we've ever heard of. And you know what? In that moment, like, I really believed in this business. To me, it was something where I was going to help women who didn't have anybody else to help them out. That was the core of the business idea. And I stood behind it. I believed in it. So because of that, I got fired up. And I actually defended myself, on live TV. I would say it's actually not stupid. Here's 5 people who hired me this week, and this is why. And it makes sense. And to my friends who doubted me, I just said to myself, let them watch. I'm not giving up on this. I believe in this. I don't need them to join my bandwagon and to march behind me. I'm strong enough and believe in myself enough to do this. And if you don't fully love your idea, if you don't love what you're going to start, then you're not ready to start it, because there's going to be a lot of people who are jealous, who are fearful for you, and who don't understand you, who are going to try and knock you down. And they will if you're not madly in love with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, my parents are extremely well-meaning, but for a long time they didn't actually think that I could make money doing what I'm doing. And so even people who are well-intentioned, right? Like, it's easier to think of people who aren't well-intentioned or who don't have personally invested in us, but it's even the people that are well-intentioned, that love us tremendously, don't want to see us fail, and they think they're doing a service to us to tell us that you shouldn't pursue it or you shouldn't quit your day job or whatever it is. And so I love that we're talking about this, Jen, because I don't think a lot of people talk about rejection, and it's so crucial to our success that we really keep to our own lane and just focus on what we want from life.
It's true. And you know what? I think when people are, telling you really shouldn't, maybe this isn't the right thing, they're projecting their own fear onto you.
Totally.
Because they love you. And you're right, it is good intentions. But if you are really all in for something, there's no reason you shouldn't give it a try. And the most influential person I've met during my personal career adventure is my business tutor and best friend now. He's 86 years old. It's so crazy that he's the person that I look up to for advice, but he encourages me to fail every single week. I have to go and meet with him every Saturday and present him with ways that I was rejected or I failed that week. And when you have someone in your life who's asking you to try to fail, you open so many doors for yourself. I mean, there's so many great things that have happened to me ever since I made it a point to wake up in the morning, think about what I'm scared to do, and then go do it. It's just been life-changing.
Well, and I want to touch back on something you said a little bit earlier, too, and that's about being truly in love for that vision of yours. Like, if you're not fighting for it hard enough, then it's not like you shouldn't be moving forward with that. And I think especially today there's this whole culture online that's like, oh, get rich quick, like just become a coach and you'll be making 7-figure months and da 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 da. But that people aren't actually like passionate or invested in what they're pursuing. And so how did you really figure out that like this was the idea? Like this is the one that you were so in love with that you would argue with a news anchor on national TV to defend it?
You know what? When I first started the business, I really wasn't sure what I was starting. I posted an ad on Craigslist offering my services as a bridesmaid for hire, out of anger, because all of my friends were asking me to be a bridesmaid. And it came to the point where people I wasn't even close with were asking me. So it just sparked this idea that, you know what? I'm good at being a bridesmaid. People who I'm hardly friends with are asking me, why couldn't I do this for strangers? So posted the ad, really had no idea what I was doing. I thought I knew what the business was, but I really learned the power of it when I had my first client. When I flew to Minnesota, worked my first wedding about a month after I posted the ad. And on my way home, I remember thinking like, wow, what I just did for this girl getting married was, an amazing experience where she personally didn't have a lot of close people in her life. She had a very interesting story, and I was able to do something for her and her wedding day that nobody else in the world was doing. And that's when I was like, you know what, if I could change someone's life in this way, I'm really behind this business. I see the power of it, and I'm going to take it as far as I can. And after you have such a powerful experience like that, working with a client, changing their life, or just seeing a spark go off, you then really stand behind your idea. And, a lot of us have full-time jobs at places we don't even like. We don't like what we're doing. So why leave that to start something for yourself that you're not completely in love with? Because what's the point? Then it's all on you. And it's hard waking up in the morning, working a job that you're not in love with. It's really hard.
That's so powerful. And what I love about it is that our story is very similar, actually. Like, Amplify Collective started on accident. We also had no idea what we were creating. But the thing that is consistent in both of our stories that I think is really powerful, because we have a lot of women come to us and say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know what, or I don't know how, or I don't know like what I would do. And so, in both of our stories, we were really led by that piece of service, that like aspect of how can I create an impact in someone else's life. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel like maybe some of our listeners that might not know what that looks like for them can kind of start diving into, well, what really lights me up? Like, what is it that my heart really desires in the world? So thank you.
Sure. And I think, the fact that people have this desire to be an entrepreneur is so cool. And it doesn't even matter if you don't know what you want to do. Just the fact that you're thinking, wow, I want to create my own opportunity. Like, that to me is such a powerful, amazing thing to think of. And I think the next step is always, well, then start thinking about what kind of problems you experience on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the problems your friends experience? And then from that, when you think of a solution, that helps you think of business ideas. I always think that that's the most important place to start, is just by thinking about everyday problems that people have, that you have, and then brainstorming weird, crazy solutions.
So what happened on your flight back from Minnesota? So did you decide like, okay, I'm going to do this full time? Like, what does your journey look like from that point on?
I left there thinking, wow, there really is something here. And from there, I was able to refine my packages. I decided to offer more packages to bridesmaids and maid of honors as well. And then, I was working full time. I still had a full-time job at a tech startup. And I said to myself, I'm going to try to do both things as long as possible, which is completely insane. But, when you live in New York City or you live anywhere and you pay your own bills, you have to have that steady income. So for a good year and a half, I worked full time while doing this on the side. I would wake up early, I'd go to sleep late, weekends were for work, and I was working what I think was, 2 full-time jobs at once. And eventually I got laid off from my full-time job, forcing me to go really far with, my own business. But, in all honesty, I say that I have a business, but I also have other streams of income as well. I'm very honest about that. I'm not making enough through my business to just do one thing. I have about 15 streams of income every single month that keep me afloat. So I think there's this notion that, you have to start a business and make all your money through that. But I'm more of, go crazy with this idea you want to pursue, but then have part-time gigs on the side that also stabilize your income and make you, not wonder how you're going to pay your, credit card bills every month.
Well, I think that there's a lot of shame in the industry that if you have a side hustle, if you have other streams of income, then you're not successful, then you're not doing enough to be a successful entrepreneur. And I love that you're talking about this because it's not true. We have to be smart too. Not everyone can do the crazy thing that I did and drop everything and move across the country and move in with my partner and do this full time and go into crazy credit card debt. Like not everyone is willing to quite sacrifice as much as I was, nor should everybody.
Well, and I mean, for me, even in the first 2 years of my business, I was still picking up like marketing clients and running other people's Instagram accounts. And like, people make it look very glamorous on the outside, but thank you for being so honest and so real about that, because the truth is, it is important to still have money coming in.
I mean, we have to live, right?
I never tell anybody quit your job to start something else. I always say you need to have income and a great platform before you quit anything. I mean, it's just it's reality. Not everyone can pay their bills while trying to start a business. And I don't think there's anything wrong with working full time and having a side hustle, or starting your business and having many side hustles to pay your bills, or whatever it takes. You cannot compare and contrast your journey to anybody else's, because you don't know what kind of existing debt the person already has or what kind of financial constraints they have. Some people in their 20s support their parents. So, I think we all have to look at our own personal journey and see what works best for us, and figure it out that way.
And the only thing I would add as a caveat is the only time if there actually is a problem is when you're selling a system that you are claiming made you a lot of money, but then you're also working a side hustle, because that's just misleading marketing, right? That's just like selling people something that you're not 100% successful in yet. So that's the only caveat I would add. We want to be conscious marketers, like Jen isn't here marketing herself as, one way and then selling something different. So I don't know. I just felt called to add that.
I think it's important, and I've seen that a lot. I see a lot of web coaches and people promote like, I made $100,000 through a webinar, and I know these people personally, and they've maybe made $100. And I think because of people like that, sometimes on the internet and in the industries, and what we see, we think that, oh, these people have it so easy. They just put up one or two things and they made a ton of money. But there's so much more behind that, and people just aren't honest about it, just like they're not honest about their failures. Those are the two things that people don't talk about in entrepreneur life or startup life that I think they need to talk about more.
Agreed. And we try to be as transparent as possible about our journey, because we want to make sure that people know the reality of what it really looks like. It's a hard journey. It doesn't mean that it's not the most gratifying, incredibly satiating journey, but it's also tremendously challenging because you're doing something that no one else sees. And that's the point of being a leader, is creating your life based on a vision that only you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the most draining yet beautiful at the same time. When I was working full time and running my business on the side, I didn't have a social life. I didn't date. I didn't have many friends. I was on my computer. If I wasn't sleeping, I was on the computer, and it was anything but glamorous. Yet, if you looked at my Instagram or my Facebook, you would say, Jen lives the best life ever. But meanwhile, Jen hasn't seen the light of day in 5 days. And, she's crying all the time and, stressed out and probably, not working out. So there is a lot of ugliness that comes along with it that I wish we exposed more. But if we're not ready to expose, it's just better that we say that, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. And even though we're posting our success on Instagram and Facebook, like, there's a lot of failures that happen. We just don't highlight them.
So what's the most recent fail that you've had, since you do so much incredible, bold things? What's the most recent thing that you've been rejected at, or you failed at, or it just didn't work out?
I am the kind of person who thinks that they can do everything. So I majored in poetry in college, but then oftentimes I think I can be my own lawyer, my own accountant, my own graphic designer and website person. So I'm learning very fast that when I try to take on these roles that people get paid a lot of money to do and are highly educated to do, that I fail. And, those are things that I'm still trying to remember. Like, I can't do all of this myself. I don't know how. I need to reach out for help. So I think that the times I fail the most, especially recently, have been learning how to ask for help and getting other people on board to help me because, I'm trying to fix up my website. I press 2 buttons and then the whole site disappears. So, things like that are just reminding me that there are people who know how to do this, and it's about time I delegate some of these tasks to them.
We were just having this conversation last night, like literally about how excited I was in 2016 because I started basically hiring people who have different zone of genius than mine is. So I get to hire them to be in their zone of genius to support me and my business. And it is seriously one of the coolest, like most exciting things I think I've ever done.
I mean, it's so amazing to do. And I think why I have a problem is that I just am so scared of losing control. Like, I have so much going through my mind. In my mind, I can picture exactly what I want. And I'm like, oh no, what if I hire you and then you build me something that's not what I want? And I think we have to give up a little bit of control after we, create, because we are not experts in everything and other people can do it faster and better than we can. And that journey toward being able to do that is very hard as an entrepreneur and a leader.
Yeah, we had those same fears when we were redoing our website in December. Like, we sat down and I was like, Thais, I actually don't think that anyone could ever fully execute on our vision. It was terrifying.
And then she actually created something 10 times better than what we had imagined.
Uh-huh.
See, that's what happens. I think that sometimes when we get results like that, we're like, okay, now we can start trusting other people because they do prove us wrong and they do really impress us.
Exactly. I love it. So what's next for you? You have a book coming out. Tell us about that.
I do. So my book, Always a Bridesmaid for Hire, hits shelves February 7th, and I'm super excited about this book. It takes a very deep look into my life as a hired bridesmaid for strangers all over the country. I've been doing this for 2 years. I have seen it all, done it all, and experienced it all at the altar.
I bet you have.
Wait, will you tell us a quick story? Just one story about one of your things. Maybe it's in the book, maybe it's not. I don't know. Just tell us one story.
We want stories. Tell us all the stories.
Sure.
The juicy details.
Juicy details.
The final chapter in my book explores the concept of people getting married for other reasons other than love. It really happens, and it's something that I didn't realize. I thought love was a fairy tale. I thought it had to be perfection. But the final chapter in my book talks about a bride I worked with who the night before her wedding calls me up to tell me the man she's marrying is gay. And the chapter explores, my personal feelings about that and how I dealt with the wedding and how my whole view on love and marriage changed after that. It's one of the most powerful chapters, I think, in the whole book, because we're trained to think that, you have to find a partner who's this, and this, and love is this, and this. But our cookie cutter visions of people, the world, and feelings like love, they have to be kind of thrown out the window. So, that's one of my favorite parts of the book. And a lot of the chapters in the book talk about my own love life, my personal stories, my struggles with finding my own partner, having my mom hack my dating account and set up dates for me. I write a whole chapter about how she managed my dating account. There's a chapter about how I decided to freeze my eggs and what happened when I went to do that. There's a chapter about me going to a matchmaker who tried to set me up to find someone. And there's also chapters about starting the business and the chaos and hell that I went through and I haven't been honest about. So it's a book that really talks about many different aspects of my life and my business and my heart. And I'm just excited to share it.
Amazing. So we have access to copies of these, Thais.
Oh my gosh, how exciting.
So I cannot wait to read it. So I've been dating for 7 years, and I've also been to a matchmaker. My mom has not hacked my dating account, but I've offered to give it to Thais's boyfriend to manage for me. And
you should. Sometimes it works out well because they're able to, take a step back and really have fun with it. Whereas sometimes when we're doing dating for ourselves, we're just so resentful and over it that it seems impossible.
Yeah, I'm over it. I've shut down all my online dating accounts.
Okay, but I want to know, so why did she marry him? What was her reasoning for? I mean, I don't want to read the book. Oh, ooh.
Do we have to read the book?
Do we have to read the book?
I would say yes, only because if I did tell you, it just the backstory behind everything makes it make more sense. Like,
okay.
Yeah, she had a very different reason for doing it. And in a way, it was beautiful. In a way, it was complicated. And in a way, I didn't understand until I was up there reading a poem at her wedding ceremony. And I had to give a speech during the reception about them. And, it's just a very powerful chapter because it really rocks your world about people. And
I love it.
Fairy tales are not real. And that's what we're trained to believe.
Wow.
Well, we get to gift copies, too, to some of our women. So
Ooh.
I'm really excited. Maybe we should make this our first Amplify Book Club book.
I mean, I love the sound of that. So, Jen, we're wrapping things up here. Tell people how they can learn more about you and get your book.
Awesome. You could learn more about me at jenglantz.com. Check out bridesmaidforhire.com. You could follow me everywhere on social media at Jen Glantz. And you can pre-order Always a Bridesmaid for Hire, or by March it'll be out on shelves, so pick it up. Always a Bridesmaid for Hire. Get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any bookstore you walk into.
I love it. Well, we have an extended cut available for those of you who want to know more about Jen. We ask some really juicy questions, things that are quite unexpected. So if you want to check out this extended cut, join our Facebook community at beamplified.community. Instead of beamplified.com, it's beamplified.community, and you will get access to this secret podcast. Thank you so much, Jen, for being on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, as always, you can find us at The Amplify Co. on all the socials. And don't forget, as always, go out and
be amplified.